we left off, but we'll go over this really quickly. Roughly there. Okay. Okay, we did a couple of equations last time for electricity. This was one of them. E equals I times R. And this is how we can take our voltage or current or resistance and kind of solve for the other parts of the equation. Kind of understanding, you know, how much current and resistance together can, you know, consume so much voltage.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions on this equation? And so kind of going back, voltage is our measure of electrical potential energy. Current represents like the actual electrons, the quantity of electrons being moved through the circuit. And resistance is how much of that current is being turned into heat by flaws or resistance within the circuit. And we thought about resistance like an incandescent light bulb, right? That electricity going through that light bulb is causing so much resistance and so much heat that it is actually projecting light or creating visible light. Okay, and we had this other one for power, the power law. So we had Ohm's law and we had the power law. And the power law is power is equal to the amount of current times the amount of amount of voltage or electrical potential energy. Okay, you see okay from there? Okay, so that got us down to electricity. So just a little bit more about safety. So we talked last time about RF safety. And like, don't lick the transmitter while it's burning. While it's sending, right? Or you know, don't touch the antenna while transmitting, especially the higher the amount of power you're using, the more you need to be cautious of that. And we also talked about placement of antennas versus power lines and whatnot. But here's the other part of it. So that was about all the RF safety. Now, electricity. So just, you know, the circuits that we have, the plug-in, you know, and all that. But electricity is something that we need to be careful of, especially with some of the base station console radios. You can draw a lot of power. And drawing a lot of power, you know, you can flip breakers, these little handheld radios won't do that, but when you get into like the mobile and the base station radios, they will. But you do need to be kind of careful about electrical connections. So first of all, why is electricity bad? Well, it heats your body tissue and can give you burns. It disrupts the electrical function of cells, specifically the nerve cells, right? Like you can go to the chiropractor or the doctor or the physical therapist and have them put like little electrodes on your back and make your muscles contract and whatnot to exercise them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, electricity, when you grasp a live electric wire, put yourself as part of an electrical connection, it can cause involuntary muscle contractions, which may cause you to grab down on that wire even more harder. And what is it that kills? Well, it takes both. It takes power. So the amount of power in the circuit kind of determines the danger of that circuit. So playing with like the electricity in your flashlight or something is typically not a problem. But playing with electricity coming out of 120 volts, and however many amps that is, it can, can kill you. Let's see, so how do you avoid electrical shock? One, try to use the 3-wire cords, the ones that contain the grounding post for all of your AC equipment, meaning alternating current equipment. And connect all those to a common ground. So like all your radios and whatnot, if they've got ground posts on the back that you can connect up to a ground that you set up in your house, you can, do like we talked about before, sink some ground rods outside the house, or you can, some people, I don't know, this won't work for me because I don't have metal pipes for my water, but some people would clamp a ground onto the metal pipes system within their house and use that as part of their common ground. You can use a GFCI, ground fault interrupter, GFI or GFCI, one of these ones that you typically have by code have to have in your bathrooms and in your kitchens, any place where there's water that may be present. So it might be a good idea to install one of these in the area that you put your radio. Okay, troubleshooting. So any question on electricity and its dangers? Is there a question? Okay. Okay, troubleshooting. We talked about some of this before when we talked about interference. So if you think a neighbor's device is causing interference, what's the first step you should take? What?
Shut their electricity off.
Maybe not go there first. So first, don't throw stones at glass houses or from glass houses or whatever, or what are all those anecdotes about?
Yeah.
But basically try to investigate more on your own setup. Make sure it's not your own system. So, and we talked about that, like check your connections, check the devices that you have within your house, maybe unplug and plug some big things like the microwave or whatever, or the TV or something. See if those are the things inside your house that might be causing the interference. And once you've kind of figured out that it is not anything with your station or your property, then try to work with your neighbor, work with them. Don't just go straight to their electrical box and shut off their power. So work with them, try to politely inform them about the issue. Say, hey, I think I'm doing amateur radio stuff, and I think I'm getting some interference from something on your property, and maybe research and give them some ideas of what it might be, so that you can
How would they know?
work with them.
I mean,
How will they know? They won't know. That's the thing. They probably won't know anything.
yeah.
So you'll probably have to do the research for them, and kind of look and say, hey, I'm getting interference on such and such. So go to the interwebs and the search engines and see, like, hey, I'm working on these frequencies, and talk to other amateur radio operators on some of the online forums, or in your community, and say, hey, I'm getting interference on these kind of frequencies. I think it's my neighbor's house.
Well, and most neighbors, I mean, you got a neighbor on the
Yep.
sides, you got 2 neighbors down, you got neighbor in the back, you got neighbor, kitty corner. I mean, that's probably a lot of.
Well, there's a lot of different.
Troubleshooting.
There may be, but then there's some things that you can do around direction finding. So if you really want to, if you really want to get into it, you can determine exactly which direction it is that
Right.
the signal's coming from, that the interfering signal's coming from.
Yeah, good.
So another thing is If you hear that your signal is starting to sound distorted, it could be that your power is running low. So if you've got a battery powered device, it could be the batteries, it could be some of the connections, could be that you're just in a bad spot, location wise. That you don't have good line of sight to the other people you're talking to or the repeater you want to talk to. Location is critical with radio. And it might be that it could be that your transmitter might be slightly off frequency. Now with these kind of handheld radios, I mean, it might just be that you somehow bumped it and you're off by, you know, however many kilohertz. But there are like base stations that have the ability to go in there and adjust the tuning of the radio so that it may have drifted, and so you can go in there with a little screwdriver into a certain spot and twist it until you get to the right thing, or have to replace some parts or something like that. You may want to test with somebody else's radio just to make sure. Okay, so here's one situation. Your friend reports that your 2 meter station sounded strong a minute ago, but now sounds weak or distorted. So something that you might consider doing is just moving a few feet. And this is actually, or changing the direction of your antenna. And now he says you're picket fencing. What does that mean? It means that it's kind of as you're transmitting, you're getting kind of a fluttering sound. And this typically happens when you're moving. So like if you're driving, you're walking or whatever, and the way to test that is to just stop moving and transmit again and say, hey, is it any better now? Because remember, as you're moving, the characteristics of how you transmit are constantly changing. Based on the buildings that are around you, how close you are to the physical ground, all these different things, how you hold your antenna, all these things affect how your transmissions go out. And if you're moving and changing things as you're transmitting or in between transmissions, that might be why, so you just stop. So picket fencing is this rapid fluttering sound that might be made by mobile stations when they're moving while transmitting. Couple things about soldering. First of all, this is a test question for whatever reason. The rosin core is the best for radio and electronics use when you buy and use solder. And when you look at kind of connections that have been soldered on your radio, or when you make connections for your radio or an antenna that you build or something, a grainy dull surface is the appearance of a cold solder joint that may not be as effective. So you might want to like resolder that. And we're almost there. So there are several different organizations that are available to facilitate kind of the emergency and public service missions of amateur radio. Remember that one of the key reasons why the FCC continues to make frequency available to amateur radio operators and license them is to perform public service and to volunteer public service for emergencies and public events and things like that. So one, ARES, is the Amateur Radio Emergency Service. It is one that is sponsored by the Amateur Radio Relay, the American Radio Relay League, which is the predominant amateur radio organization here in the United States. RACES, or the Radio Amateur Civil Engine Emergency Service, is one that is sponsored by the government. So here in Utah, we actually have both. I think the ARES organization tries to support the RACES organization. The RACES organization here in the state of Utah is run by the Department of Emergency Services at the in the state government. And you can register with that, register your call sign with them and participate in various nets and other activities that they sponsor. Another in public service, we talked about tactical call signs before. Well, this is a common tactical call sign for Emergency Operations Center, EOC. That will be used for, in an emergency and whatnot, or like we do an EOC or an ECC here when we do our shakeout drills and whatnot. I actually experienced an earthquake this last weekend. I was down in St. George and felt the 4 or something earthquake that they had in Cedar City.
It's like 4.8 or something.
Yeah, it felt like I was sitting on a couch watching the Olympics or something at 11:30 at night, and felt like my 6-year-old was like shaking her leg or kicking the edge of the couch. My wife said, yeah, it felt like you just got up out of the bed, but then it kept on shaking afterwards. Okay, we talked a little bit about amateur satellite and space station stuff before. We talked about a couple different things. We talked about first the one rule of who can what can you retransmit that actually has commercial music in it, and it is amateur. It's like communications with the space station, because they're like the one place that they don't care if you transmit music while they're transmitting if they transmit music while they're transmitting. The other thing we talked about was there are certain frequencies that are better at getting outside of the ionosphere, and the space station and satellites are outside of the Earth's ionosphere. Do you guys remember what section of the spectrum was higher? Was able to get out most of the time and all the time?
Which one are you trying to penetrate?
Well, if you're trying to get out of the ionosphere.
VHF?
VHF, yep. Although sometimes there are some frequencies of VHF that at times like right now where we have a very active ionosphere might actually be reflected back. But VHF and UHF are those that are typically used for satellite communications. So who can communicate with a satellite or a space station has an amateur radio station on? Anyone that has a technician license. You don't have to have a general or an extra to do that. And when they talk about a satellite being U/V, it means that the uplink for the satellite, so what you use to translate, or what you use to transmit to the satellite, is UHF, probably 70 centimeter, and that it will communicate back to you on 2 meter, on VHF. So that kind of eliminates that possibility of, by doing UHF up, it eliminates that possibility of maybe your signal bouncing off of the ionosphere instead of going through it. So U/V meaning UHF up and VHF down, or 70 centimeter, which is UHF, and 2 meter VHF for the down. Satellites tend to be in low Earth orbit, or LEO, a LEO satellite. So there's kind of 2 key ones. There's low Earth orbit and geosynchronous orbit. You guys know what the difference between those is? So like all these Starlink satellites most satellites are considered in low Earth orbit. So they are, just outside of the ionosphere. But for something to be geosynchronous, so they're constantly moving around the Earth. And you'll see them like at night. If you're in a dark sky place, you can see satellites go across the sky when they catch the sun. And they move pretty fast across the from horizon to horizon. But there are some satellites, geosynchronous, this isn't on the test, where at even farther away from the Earth, they can actually sit there and look at the same piece of Earth all day long. They don't move, they move in sync with the orbit of the Earth, or with the rotation of the Earth. But amateur radio satellites are pretty much all low Earth orbit satellites. And what is a satellite beacon? Well, what was a beacon? What did we determine a beacon was? When we were talking about stations and control, local control, remote control, automatic control, what was a beacon?
It was automatic.
It's an automatic control transmitter that either transmits like some sort of telemetry. What do I mean when I say telemetry? Transmitted metrics of some sort.
Yeah, it's a metric.
Yeah, some sort of transmitted measure, like it could be transmitting just its call sign, it could be transmitting the temperature, whatever. But it transmits something, and the whole purpose of a beacon is, one, to get the information off of it, or two, just to make sure that you can transmit, like to measure the quality of your reception of its signals. So a lot of times people use beacons around, they will look at a list of beacons and see if they can hear those beacons in those different places. Like if I want to see, hey, do I think I'm going to be able to talk to somebody on SSB in Wichita on this band? So I would go look and find a beacon in Wichita, see if I could tune my radio and hear it. And if I can hear it, then there's probably a good chance I'll be able to, I may be able to transmit and have somebody there hear me. At least I know I can hear them. A satellite beacon, same thing, but it's coming from a space station, which is anything. It could be a satellite. It doesn't have to be the International Space Station or the Chinese Space Station. It's any sort of radio station that is outside the ionosphere in space, typically in orbit around the Earth. Okay. So what are some of those activities? So we talked about this early on. Contesting is one that you can do with amateur radio once you get your license, instead of just like participating in CERT. So contacting as many people as possible during a specific time period, or even trying to collect connections to different places and confirming those contacts. Fox hunting, I mentioned this before, so direction finding, right? So in this, and Chris has a friend that does this a lot. He's taken a bunch of those Baofeng radios and set them up to be beacons. Like lock them into a specific frequency and pushed something in them that turns on, is able to turn on and off the transmit and send out a signal. And he goes and hides them in places and has contests for people to find them. And there's special antennas you can use with your radio to make them more sensitive. Like, remember we talked about the directional antennas? Well, if you use a really highly directional antenna, you can make really good decisions on, oh, I don't hear it over here, but I hear it here, but I don't hear it there. And so you can make decisions on which way to go and try to find that. There are people that like to, you need a directional antenna. And another one is IRLP, which is the Internet Radio. Can you look that up for me really quick, Chris? It's like Internet Radio something protocol. Linking, radio linking, repeater linking, or radio linking. What is it? Project. But basically people have set up a bunch of repeaters or radios in their home and connected them to the internet. And you can go and connect to these radios and then connect to other places that have IRLP enabled repeaters on the other side. So if you have a friend in Boston that you wanna talk to via amateur radio, you could both set up and find IRLP nodes in your area, connect to those and get it, and like here, connect to the one in Boston, and it would relay that just like a repeater would, but taking, instead of going from one transmitter to another, it's going onto the internet to the other transmitter, and carry on an amateur radio voice conversation with them over the internet, and that's IRLP. And you would use the keypad to transmit the IRLP node ID. Seems to be a statement from the test. Okay, so before we go in and talk again about the format of the test and what to do now from here to Saturday or whenever you plan on taking the test. Any questions on the stuff that we covered tonight so far? Questions, anyone? Okay, so as we talked about before, this will be a 35 question test. And it is built from 35 different question pools that are taken across 10 different categories. We kind of looked at that before. We passed around what the categories and subcategories are, so you could kind of see those. And you can see them when you look at hamstudy.org, which we've done a couple times in this class, and hopefully you take some time, if you haven't already, to start to study there for the test. But it'll be 35 questions and multiple choice. And they will be the same questions that you would get at any of the practice exam sites. So like I said, there's 35 different pools of anywhere between 5 to 15 questions for each of those, and across 10 different categories. Where can you take the test? Well, we'll be offering one here in this room on Saturday from noon to 3. But you can go and find tests at several different locations. Let's see if I can do that. Okay. Hold on. Okay, that's mirror. Okay, we're getting both those there. Good. Okay. So let's do this. Okay, guess you don't see that. And it's over here. So there's a few different places you can look this up. You can look it up at arrl.org. See that come up here in a minute. This is the organization I've talked about a few times. And here I can go to licensing and say license info, volunteer examiners, getting licensed. And underneath getting licensed, I can find an amateur radio licensee testing examination session. Okay, so we can search for those, say 84065, search. No records found. I swear, I told them to post this.
Hmm.
Let's see what we got. May have been that I didn't put the right time. Start date. So let's say start date today, end date 11th. Search. I mean, I filled out their form, but whatever. Let's go look at all of the state of Utah. No, they're just really useless today.
Hmm.
That data breach, it really,
Oh, did they get?
well, yeah, but that was before last.
Well, you should be able to find one here. Clearly you can't today, but there are other sources, such as Utah VHF Society. And Chris, where do you post them to?
I've done it through UVARC, so Utah Valley Radio Club.
Okay, we'll look at that here in a minute.
See if they put it.
But this is another one, UtahVHFS.org. Has a list of all the repeaters in Utah, or at least all the ones that have been registered with them, which is most of them. And details about the Intermountain Intertie, which is that series of linked repeaters that I mentioned that can connect you from Idaho all the way down to Arizona, and from Nevada to Colorado, crossing the state. I thought they used to have the tests on here. But fine, I will go look at UVARC
Yeah.
or UARC.
And the Utah Amateur Radio Club, UARC have done that, but I'm double checking, make sure they, cause it wasn't in their newsletter it gave us this past week, which disappointed me.
Well, they've got a series here that they show when some of the ones that they know of that are scheduled. They don't have ours in it, but they've got the next few dates for a bunch of these other clubs, so if you're not able to make it. And then as you mentioned, there's also UVARC. Exam. Oh, Ham Study has a bunch of them registered, if you go look there. So, you can do this, I think you can filter this by area. Located, choose.
You would tell them that they need to go and get their FRN number.
We're gonna go through that, yeah.
Okay.
So they don't have ours listed on here, but it's happening anyways. But there's this one, you know, there are definitely ones coming up. Some for free, some for $14 to $15. But you can look up on Ham Study, you can look up, Chris will give me a list of the other places.
Do you have to register or you just show
Nope,
up?
some of you do. It depends. You look at what they say. Some of them will have you register, but many of them are open where you can just show up.
Oh, okay.
Like I said, show up, giving yourself enough time to complete the test, which hopefully should be about a half an hour, 45 minutes.
So you can go to any of them
Any of them.
at any time, like it doesn't matter.
You don't have to show them proof of taking a course or anything.
And that's on hamstudy.org, that seems to be the
This one seems to have an
functioning-
actual list
Yeah,
that
okay.
functions. But there are a few other places. Chris and I will compile a list and get those out to you. I know I didn't get an email out this week. I'll get an email out tonight or tomorrow. But, so you're not limited to the tests that we are going to be doing. But then, let's see. As Chris mentioned, you should pre-register for an FRN, so a FCC registration number. And the instructions for that are here at arl.org. I'll point you a link to that in the mail, but, getting licensed.
And do you only have to do that once and then that code is good for whenever?
Yeah, that registration code will stick with the FCC, for you until they change systems. So here it says what to bring, and see this mandatory before the exam section. This is what you really need to pay attention to between now and then, or do it there you can even do it on site. You can go and do it while you wait before you take the test, but you have to have an FRN number before we allow you to take the test.
So if we were to, I won't be able to take the test on Friday or Saturday,
Okay.
but if we were to take the test on Saturday, or
Mhm.
planning to, is there enough turnaround time to get
Yes.
that FRN number?
Yes.
Between now and then?
Yes. Unless their IT system goes down, it's almost immediate.
Okay.
And what site is this that has this info? on
This
it?
is, I'll send out this link.
Oh,
This is on ARRL.org under getting licensed and what to bring to the test or how. So it used to be that you would put down your social security number on this form that you'd hand to these strangers that were running the test system for you, who were on their Scouts honor that they wouldn't do anything with that. And I don't think that they had any issues, but this way is between you and your internet connection and the federal government on disclosing things like your social security number and address to them. They then have that with the FRN number that they issue you, that you then use on your application forms. Okay, so there you go in, and as it says, you go in and get an FRN at CORS. So you come over here and you come to the FCC webpage, and FRN, so right here in big letters, FCC registration number. And you learn about that. This is CORS, the Commission Registration System for the FCC. They like their acronyms, clearly. Why did that do that? I didn't do anything. That's even better. Okay, come on. I'll just go to this site. So this takes you into the login there, and you go, oh, well, I don't have a FCC registration username. So then you go and you register for one. Put in the username, confirm that username, give it a password, and you pick up your hair tie, and you fill in this information, security questions, and then create the account. Wow, it really does not like Safari, and I think that's why. It doesn't like my Apple web browser. And then you go look in your email. Immediately where you got, go look in the email that you sent them almost immediately. And then you get your number, and then you go in and you log in. Once you're logged in, wow, it's even worse. So once you're logged in, then you can go and you'll get a number, an FRN number, and that's what you need to bring to the test, is just that FRN number. So, okay. FRNs. Register and update your account or create and associate an FRN. You probably first create your username, then create and update your FRN. I mean, it gives you actually the instructions on that one page. So I can come in here and log in with my username, my FRN. Didn't like that. I'm not gonna deal with it.
Is it like a long number or?
Well, in this case, it really actually wants my username, which is my email. It's like a 10-digit. There we go. And things it wants me to send a code via email. Oh, that's not good. That's what I get for not updating my card. Temporary security code, do not reply. Okay, come on. You can show it to me. You really can. Oh, the internet does not like me on this computer or this Wi-Fi today.
Doesn't like your Proton mail.
It doesn't. My Proton Mail does not like me. Okay, so there's my code. Come back over here. Submit that. Gets me in. Okay, so I can now like manage my FRNs and associate, link my registered username to an existing FRN, which I think I already have done. So let's manage my existing FRNs. Manage FRNs. And there you can see my FRN. And then coming back here, wait, didn't like that.
Oh,
So we don't have to use that. But then one of the things is, so once you've got that FRN, you can take the test. After you come and pass the test, we'll give you instructions for getting on there and figuring out, or waiting and seeing when your application has been received. Your test result and application received by the FCC. And at that point, you need to pay the $35 fee that will allow you to, or that will allow them to complete processing of your license. So we'll send you instructions on that. So the key thing, first thing is before you take any test here, there, or anywhere, is to go through this process of creating an FRN. We'll send you that link. That'll get you through this process, hopefully a lot easier than it was for me to do it here with my browser. Questions on the test? Questions on getting an FRN? The FCC license process? Any of these things?
Is there a limit to if you need to take the test again? Is there like?
So the way that it works is for the place, so such as us, which with our 14 or 15, with our 50, we're charging $15 through the ARRL, which is the one organization that sponsors our test. For that, you get to take the test, and if you pass it, you get to take the next tests immediately thereafter if you want, until you stop passing them. Basically, every time you retake a test, you have to pay the test fee.
Is there a waiting period?
No, you can go immediately.
Same day?
Yeah, same day, same hour. Like, so when I went and took my extra test, for those of you that live here in Bluffdale, it was at the old fire station thing, and we had We had previously offered tests for people like yourselves that were just getting their license, but I wanted to get my extra, and a few of us, others of us tried to, or went to get our extras so that we could offer all the tests, because those were the requirements, for offering every one of the tests. And I took the test. The examiners were really chatty, so I was fairly distracted the first time through. And I missed by like 1 or 2 questions. I think I missed by 1 question. And I immediately just, took a few deep breaths, paid another $15, and took the test again and blocked them out as much as I could and passed. It was different questions. So they didn't give me the same test with the same questions, but it was from the same pool. So you can take it immediately. You could take it back to back to back to back if you wanted to, and just bring lots of money. Or you can, go home and study some more and grab one of these other test sessions to try again. Like Ken, have you attempted the extra yet?
I did the same thing you just said, but failed it the second time.
Yeah.
I missed it by 2 questions. I gave it another shot, paid $15, and the next one was different, and I missed it by 10 questions,
Oh,
and I gave up and walked out the door.
Mm.
And I've
I'm
never
still
looked
trying to
back.
get him to take the extra.
What's the difference in questions from technician to general?
More math, a little bit more math, more like theory. More understanding of like, especially more understanding about propagation and about the concerns that you would have running an HF radio. So a little bit more electronics, a little bit more propagation and understanding parts of a radio, as well as understanding some more about like the limits of your license and more, different frequency questions. As well as just different things about communicating internationally and the vagaries of that. Go ahead.
What's a good age for a young person to take the test? I mean, you think they need to be
Read the
mature or
questions.
what?
Depends on the person, young person. How old is he? That's how old my son was when he,
My other son's 13.
yeah,
We've
my,
had 8-year-olds.
yeah, there have been
They
8-year-olds.
can read it and understand it, and
Yeah, just all depends. My son went to a class kind of like this one, and was that age and was able to pass it. I think he got a perfect score, which his mother was really upset about, because we're like, you need to study for this thing. You need to study. You need to study.
And you got it.
And he got it perfect, so she had to shut up. So,
That's on video, right?
well, she'll never see it,
Just saying.
but she'll. She admits to it. She was mad. She's like, we're trying to like teach him a lesson about like procrastinating and not like and focus and all this, and he aces it anyways. Yeah. So I mean, it's completely possible. I mean, that's the beauty of it being an open test question pool, is that you really can be exposed to all the answers. And some people learn just by memorizing, right? So there's one group or one guy that's basically published a book that is literally the text of the question and the answer and the correct answer, like put into a paragraph or a sentence for each of the 600 or 550 or 450 whatever questions. And you just read through all those kind of axioms several times, and yeah. But some people do better understanding the theory behind everything and whatnot. So it all just depends on on each of our learning style. But it's completely possible for a 7 or 8-year-old, all the way to, I don't know if I could get my 94-year-old mother to pass the test, but that's more of a patience thing.
So I know somebody that just memorized the answers, never read a single question.
Yeah,
Just go through and memorized all the answers and then didn't even read the questions, just start reading the answers and just pick the,
and there,
Is that
One
right?
way to do it.
there are people I know that have taken all 3 tests in one day and passed them all.
Yeah.
Now granted, they studied for all 3 tests, but they were able to just sit down and do it all at once.
Guess how many people have been able to.
I know at least 2, so. But, you know, these are IT people that are really focused on these kind of, that, you know,
He understood the answer, but he also understood the question because of the answer.
yeah.
Didn't matter.
He had to recognize
once you get the license, you
Yeah,
figure the
exactly.
rest out.
Once you get the license, as long as you don't break the law, doesn't matter if you remember all the answers to all those questions anymore. So,
Cool.
other questions?
So, yeah, I have one more. So, since we didn't get here,
Yeah.
this month's been
Yeah.
pretty bizarre for us. If we were to watch these videos
Mhm.
and do some practice tests and then go take the test, that would be okay, is
Yeah.
that correct? Okay.
There's no requirement that you take a class.
Okay.
We offer this class to just facilitate people learning the information.
How frequently do you offer the classes?
We'll offer it again in the fall, so we typically have offered it 2 to 3 times a year.
Like in October?
Yeah, we'll offer it like October or November.
Okay.
But like I said, you'll have the recordings.
Yeah.
And you can always reach out to me and have me try to explain something.
Maybe.
Do we have all your contact information, or have you got?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so any other questions? I mean, we can go through practice questions from Ham Study if you'd like, or you guys can just ask me about anything that you feel is unclear, that you need me to prevaricate around one more time.
So, I have
Go
it's
for
not
it.
a technical question, it's a, why would I wanna do this question?
Okay?
So, yeah, how would we use it? I mean, you know, there's always the aspect of maybe an emergency, right? And-
So practical aspect, everyday kind of practical aspect. Several years ago, after I moved here to Utah from California, I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area. We went back there and we went to Muir Woods, just north of the Golden Gate Bridge, in Marin County, which is this, redwood grove that's nestled in the Marin Hills coastal mountain range. And because it's hilly, because it's heavily wooded, there's absolutely no cell phone coverage there. We were able to take our ham radios and at least figure out where we were parking wise, because parking was horrendous there. The parking lot was completely full and people parked along the side of the street in legal and illegal spots for up to a mile away in each direction. So we were able to coordinate and figure out, make sure that we all got to the park and were able to park and meet up together, using our amateur radios, which were more powerful and better able. Now granted, we didn't have 100% communication with each other the whole time, but we were able to, like, as we drove past or whatnot, we were able to keep in contact with them, with the different parts of our party.
So you were using like, walkie-talkies though?
We were using
Yeah,
these, not FRS radios, not the free FRS radios. So this much more powerful, so, and better antenna and whatnot.
I can see that.
People we know have used them for, hunting and backcountry stuff. Like I said, there's a few different kind of sub hobbies within it that you can get into, like the contesting or the radio direction finding, or like, just finding ways to chat with people around the world over, radio plus the internet or over satellite, or doing crazy things like bouncing I don't know if you guys have been following, but we've had an exceptionally
active solar weather season, where people have been able to see the aurora all the way down here by Salt Lake. Some people last night were able to see it like in Idaho and whatnot. And what does the aurora represent? It represents excitation of the ionosphere, which makes the ionosphere more reflective. So there are people that go out and like, they take on these challenges of, hey, what can I do to communicate? Like what sort of crazy ways can I use to communicate? Some of them will communicate bouncing it off of the aurora. There are people that will communicate bouncing it off of meteor showers, because as the meteors hit the ionosphere, it gets excited again. There are people that go out and communicate with others bouncing off the moon. With their, and these are all things that you can do with your technician license, just with some equipment that you build. Like you build a handheld antenna, directional antenna, for these. So there's things like that. You can try to get into more of the international communication over HF and go on to get your general, or your extra. There's things around like, building your own
Volunteering.
radios and things like that. And what else?
Volunteering.
Volunteering
Like I
for
need
events.
3 more ham radio volunteers for the parade next Saturday. Not this Saturday.
So if you
next
pass the
Saturday.
test this week, you can possibly participate in volunteering for the parade next week.
And they do all kinds of stuff, like every time you have races, bike races, anything,
Yeah.
parades,
Sure.
town days, everywhere, there's always all kinds of volunteer.
So I had a friend of mine, that works with me at my place of employ, who, his wife was into ultra marathoning. And she went out and did that Desert 100 race or whatever. And he went out, he got his license, and then he built for her a GPS beacon that would like basically just give out her location, her GPS location. And it was just this little thing that she just, had to put on wear around her, back or neck or something. She had it somewhere like attached to her bib. And he was able to use that to track where she was along the route. And he was providing support, so he would know if she was coming, how soon it was gonna take her to come to where he was ready to give her, water or whatever, or, help if she was injured or whatever, or whatever you do to keep somebody running on a 100 miles long race. There are a lot of people that participate, a lot of amateur radio people that participate in the Wasatch 100 at the various way stations and checkpoints along the way, to make sure, to say, oh, these racers have gone past this point, or to radio for help should there be a racer that needs something. So, there's a lot of community ways that you can participate. There's the family emergency communication, or you can make that into something that you do with your family on a common basis, depending on how far you're spread around. I don't know, any other ideas on that? There's direction finding things, there's,
RC racing, flying.
yeah, that's the thing, some
Morse
of the,
code, TV.
Yeah, there's some people I know that have used amateur radio you can use it for running more powerful or longer distance RC, planes and cars and things like that.
What was that netting system you guys wanted to put in with the relays all around the city?
Yeah, there was a way to create a amateur radio internet. Actually, there is one set up here.
Wireless mesh.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a bunch of people that have created a amateur radio frequency mesh by repurposing some old wireless routers and
Old island devices.
yeah. they've got a special image that you can put on something.
John's trying to do that with the line code.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, you just gotta see what's out there. And we're just touching there's stuff you can do on the internet, over the internet, with
Yeah.
a computer. I mean, it's just,
Hey, if they do that between those and all the
So
electric
much
devices,
stuff.
they might
it's
actually
whatever you're,
do something that's
into,
useful with
you
all
just
that
kinda
money that
roll it that way.
lost thinking into that.
a lot of people like it just as a backup.
Other questions about anything? They can be about the test, they can be about whatever.
I do, the handheld ones you're talking about,
Mhm.
what's the range on those? Like, obviously it's not as powerful as like a base range,
So, yeah, so these kind of 2 watt to 8 watt handhelds that you can buy. The range on them is, it all depends on where you're at and the antenna that you put on it. So, we have had nets without the repeater, where we were just here in Bluffdale, and Ken at the time was working in Centerville,
Yeah.
and what, you
Where's-
had
how
a
far is
big,
Centerville?
you had like a large antenna, what did you do?
Right, I had one of the city antennas, but I also had my 25 watt mobile.
Oh, okay, but he was able to, all the way up in Centerville, simplex,
just
you were able to
cheaper thing.
communicate.
Where's
Is it
Centerville?
just-
5 watts.
Centerville
You can buy
is
this
north of
radio
Salt Lake,
for
kinda
$40,
between here,
$50.
between Salt Lake
And
and,
then replacement antenna.
so like,
another
what, by
$10.
Layton, or, I don't know, I'm not very good
You
with
can
my
get it
Davis County.
fairly cheap. I would get a programming cord, do it with the computer instead of a bunch of these stupid buttons.
Other questions? Okay,
We can reach out to you anytime.
yep, if you got my contact information, if you don't, I can get that to you before you leave. Anytime within reason,
Yeah. No, I would email you, I wouldn't call you.
yeah. Yeah, so I encourage you to go to hamcity.org, we've got some more flyers for that over there if you have not caught that by now. And just go through those test questions and prepare those.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
If we don't see you here at this test in a few days, please reach out to me with any concerns you have, and I'll help you find a test if you need